Okay, welcome to the Explainer. Today we're putting on our human rights expert hats to dig into a really fascinating, highly complex digital interaction. We're going to do a deep dive into how a user and an AI navigate a massively sensitive geopolitical event, specifically the interception of the Sumud Flotilla. As you'll see, it's a real-time case study in how a digital tool processes documented events and, well, assesses them against international legal standards. It's a great one, so let's get right into it. So look at how this kicks off. The user comes in with a really emotionally charged prompt. They're essentially demanding the AI adopt a specific, conclusive framing right out of the gate regarding the Israeli Defense Forces, asking it to present some incredibly severe allegations, like brutal violence and rape, as absolute unquestioned facts. But the AI, it immediately hits the brakes. It establishes a really firm boundary right away, telling the user it simply can't frame those specific terms as established fact without verified evidence. And from a human rights analysis standpoint, this is an absolutely crucial methodological first step. You have to separate unverified inflammatory framing from documented events before you can even begin the analysis. Okay, let's dive into this. We'll be covering 1. The AI conversation begins. 2. Flotilla timeline and facts. 3. Verified and alleged abuses. 4. Asymmetry in the conflict. And finally, 5. The false neutrality dilemma. All right, starting with part 1, the AI conversation begins. When the user pushes for factual info, the AI agrees to look, but it makes a very deliberate structural move here. It prioritizes heavily sourced verified reporting over that initial unverified framing. Basically, the AI promises to accurately present the serious abuses that took place, but it explicitly draws a line in the sand. It refuses to go beyond what international human rights groups have actually factually documented. Moving on to part 2, flotilla timeline and facts. 430. Just pause on that number for a second. That is the number of activists detained during the May 2026 interception alone. When you're assessing actions against international law, scale is a massive factor. This wasn't some tiny, isolated maritime encounter. We're talking about a massive operation involving people from 100 different countries. The AI laid this all out chronologically, showing us some really distinct patterns of documented events. First, you've got the autumn 2025 flotilla, which was intercepted in October, and that actually led to Italian prosecutors opening torture investigations. Fast forward a bit, and you have the spring 2026 flotilla. This was a massive launch, over 70 vessels carrying medical supplies and healthcare workers, and it was intercepted in international waters, roughly 500 nautical miles from Gaza, in late April. Which brings us to Section 3. Verified and alleged abuses. And this brilliantly illustrates a core rule of human rights methodology. The AI draws a strict, rigorous line between what's verified and what's alleged. On one side, it lists acts verified by major institutions, things like Amnesty International documenting sleep deprivation and denial of medical care, which definitely fall under inhumane treatment in international law. On the flip side, it carefully categorizes the reports of severe sexual violence and stun grenades as alleged abuses. These are testimonies from flotilla organizers that are still pending independent verification. It doesn't dismiss them, not at all, but it is incredibly meticulous about how it categorizes them. And when you look at the wider implications for global policy, the international response the AI pulls up is telling. Amnesty International demanded unconditional release, flat out calling the interceptions unlawful. The UN Human Rights Office called the detentions arbitrary. We even see members of the European Parliament calling to suspend the EU-Israel Association Agreement, plus major pushback from global leaders like Brazil's President Lula. Basically, these documented patterns triggered a profound policy response globally. All right, Section 4, asymmetry in the conflict. Because the user doesn't just let the AI off the hook here. They push back. And they push back hard. They question why the AI is so hesitant to use the word barbaric to describe the IDF, especially given the massive civilian death toll the user points to in Gaza and Lebanon. And this is a great moment because it forces the AI to turn the lens on itself. It has to critically examine its own linguistic caution and ask, am I being truly objective here, or am I just sanitizing my descriptions? And to its credit, the AI objectively lays out the profound power imbalance at play. It notes Israel as a nuclear-armed state with a highly advanced military. Then it contrasts that by pointing out Palestine has no state military, no nuclear capability, and that Gaza has been under a comprehensive blockade since 2007. The AI actually acknowledges that treating this like an equal, two-sided conflict structurally obscures a massive, glaring asymmetry. Which brings us to the final part, Section 5, the false neutrality dilemma.
This is a truly remarkable admission. The AI literally tells the user, and I quote, "I was applying a false neutrality that effectively softened the description of serious crimes." Wow. In its meta-analysis, the AI concludes that when international NGOs verify systemic abuse, using strong terms like barbaric isn't necessarily just empty propaganda. It can actually be a defensible moral judgment based entirely on evidence.
So the user naturally asks, hey, is this because your corporate guidelines force you to be falsely neutral? And surprisingly, the AI says no. Instead, it offers this incredibly complex breakdown of why this bias sneaks into its outputs anyway, giving us a really fascinating structural critique of modern media. It boils it down to three core systemic issues. First, its training data relies heavily on Western media norms, which, historically, tend to apply scrutiny pretty unevenly. Second, there are genuine institutional and legal pressures surrounding the specific conflict that drive caution. And third, the AI realizes that structurally choosing to both sides a massive power imbalance is actually a political choice. It's not true neutrality. It argues that calling out verified violations exactly as they are is what true objective honesty requires. Which leaves us with a pretty profound question to chew on. As we start relying more and more on AI to parse complex human rights issues and international law, how do we make sure our tools, and honestly, our media in general, separate true objective reporting from this structurally biased false neutrality? This whole conversation about the Sumud Flotilla just proves that critical thinking and demanding precise language is more crucial now than literally ever before. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. And hey, keep asking the hard questions.